Good day. Who's this young man?
My little brother Patrick.
And Patrick, would you like to say hello to these?
Sandra was 10 days shy of her 29th birthday when she disappeared on the 4th of December 2000. She was born in Fotish in 1971, a townland of 12 cottages outside the town of Crossmolin in County Mayo. It is a small town where everyone knows each other and it's quite a close-knit community. She was the eldest of 6 children, and Sandra's sister Bridie said they were very close. They were raised in a small cottage, so space wasn't an option. Sometimes you'd have 2 to a bed, if not more. You had to get on because they all lived on top of each other. The house was divided in age. You had the older ones, Sandra, James and Bridie, and then the younger ones, Patrick, David and Mary. Sandra was a bit of a mother hen with the younger ones. If any of them fell over, Sandra would come running. Her motherly instinct was a great help to her mother. Her brother Patrick described her as kind, funny and smart. She was very competitive and a sore loser. For example, if they were playing cards, they'd let her win 9 times out of 10 because she'd flip the table over when she was losing. But they smile now thinking back, as these are fond memories of Sandra.
By God, she was competitive.
Yeah, she was very competitive.
Oh, she'd kill me now for saying this, but she would, she was so competitive.
A sore loser, oh my God.
And the table would get tipped if she wasn't winning. So I think 9 out of 10 times we just let her win because it was easier, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
At 16 years of age, Sandra decided to stay with her Aunt Anne in Killala, County Mayo, for a few weeks during the summer holidays from school. Anne suffered from arthritis and would be glad of the help and the company, as she had no one else to mind her. This was a common custom in rural Ireland at the time. The few weeks turned into a few months, and then she ended up staying there permanently. Killala is a small fishing town around 16 kilometres from Crossmolin in the northwest of Mayo. It's a quaint little town but very quiet. Sandra didn't finish school. She became a full-time carer for Anne. Sandra told the family that she missed them often. She missed the family environment, but she felt she couldn't go back home as she'd be letting Anne down and she'd have no one to mind her. So Sandra stayed with Anne in the 1-bedroom house where Sandra's bed was the couch. She didn't have a very active social life in Killala. David, her brother, said she gave up the best years of her life, which were her teenage years and early 20s. Sandra didn't experience life like other teenagers would. We all learn to navigate life through our siblings first, then our friends and experiences. She was surrounded by middle-aged to elderly people. She would do the shopping, housework and keep them company. This was all taking Sandra away from the usual environment of a teenager and would have left her more innocent and naive in this sheltered life. Anne and Sandra would visit the family every Sunday night. Bridie, her sister, said she felt Sandra put on a brave face for the sake of the family. She'd act like all was okay, but Bridie felt she was not happy. Her happiest times were that Sunday night visit every week. From the interviews that I came across about this case, Anne was not an easy woman to be around, let alone live with. She was very demanding. She would say jump and Sandra would ask how high. Anne wanted to be in control all the time and was very domineering. It is said she probably feared Sandra would meet someone and actually have a life, so in turn tried to keep a firm grip on her, always telling her what she could do and when she could do it, so there would be no chance of her ever leaving her. But this control would lead Sandra down a dramatic turn in her life, 10 years later when she was 26. I think Sandra was starved of freedom and affection and very lonely. She met someone and got pregnant. There is no mention of who the father was, and he didn't seem to be involved in the baby's life or Sandra's. So basically, it's none of our business. 6 months after the baby was born and still living with her Aunt Anne in the 1-bedroom house and sleeping on the couch, Sandra was under fierce pressure from her aunt. She did not want a baby in her house. She was a good mother and she didn't feel it was the right environment to bring up a baby. Sandra was raised in a house full of people and loving parents, and she wanted that for her baby, which she felt she couldn't provide. So she made the ultimate sacrifice and gave the baby up for adoption. That left a mark on poor Sandra. To give up a baby that she had carried for 9 months and loved and cared for another 6 months. How could it not be traumatic? In June 2000, tragedy would strike the Collins family. James, the second eldest, would be involved in an accident in the factory he worked in. Unfortunately, he fell into a machine and had his leg cut off. The rescue workers tried in vain to get him out, but he was trapped in the grinder and he bled out and died. The staff and workers were traumatised, and even the doctor that attended the scene said it was the worst night of his life. So this brings us to Sunday, December the 3rd, 2000. 6 months after James's death, and Sandra would visit her family as usual with her aunt. She was her usual self and nothing seemed off. Her sister Bridie didn't get to see her as it was her birthday and she had gone out for dinner. The next day, Monday the 4th, the day Sandra would go missing, Anne sent Sandra out to get food for the dinner. She bought sausages and other items in the local shop at around 8 p.m. She was not seen again until 11 p.m. when she bought a bag of chips in the local chipper. Chips are fries and chipper is a takeaway. She was alone and her clothes were dry, but it was a terrible night of rain, so she must have been with someone that was waiting nearby in a car. It was also noted that it was unusual for Sandra to buy chips in the first place. This would be the last confirmed sighting of her. On Tuesday the 5th, Anne rang Bridie, Sandra's sister, to say she had gone out to the shop the night before and hadn't come home. Bridie wasn't overly concerned as she was nearly 29 years old and an adult. Anne also told her that Sandra had had a shower, put on makeup and got dressed up before she left. So Bridie thought she was probably out with friends that Anne didn't know about and ended up at a party and was still sleeping it off. Patrick, her brother, thought Anne and Sandra maybe had had a row, and Sandra finally stood up to her and stormed out. But then it came to 7 p.m. that evening and there was still no sign of Sandra. She didn't own a mobile phone and she didn't have a car. Bridie and her parents made their way up to Killala to Anne's house. Of course, the first thing they asked her, did they have a row, and she said no. As far as she was concerned, she had gone down to get groceries and she'd be right back. It was then that the Collins' family decided to contact the Gardaí. The Gardaí opened a missing person case straight away because this was so out of character for Sandra. They visited the local shops, spoke to the people that knew her and explored the town, including the pier, and out towards Bantry Island for any sightings of her, but nothing. Over the next few days the search intensified. The shoreline was searched as they said if she had fallen into the water from the pier in Killala, the tide would wash her ashore, but no body was found. The younger children of the Collins' family were told that Sandra was gone on holidays and she'd be back. But Mary, the youngest, knew there was more to it, and as the days went on, the parents had to tell them the truth, that their sister was missing. The community of Killala came together to look for her, and even though Sandra only moved there in her teen years, she had integrated herself so well and was known to be kind and helpful towards the elderly living on their own, that everyone was very concerned about her whereabouts. On the 9th of December, a grim discovery was made down by the pier in Killala, the pier that had been searched by the family and Gardaí over the previous days. But suddenly Sandra's fleece jacket was found on the ground. In the pocket of the jacket was a packet of sausages and a piece of paper with the numbers of 2 abortion clinics in the UK and the number of the man she was seeing at the time. Gardaí rang Bridie to tell her, and she went and identified the jacket as Sandra's. Gardaí and the family were miffed as how it got there. The only explanation was someone had planted it there to try and convince everyone that maybe Sandra had committed suicide. Even though Sandra had been through a lot, getting pregnant, giving up the baby, and then her brother James dying, and she was pregnant again, people that didn't know her would say yes, she had probably taken her own life. But her family, who knew her so well, said no way would she have done that. Plus the shoreline had been searched and the sub-aqua team had been in the water and no body was recovered. To the Gardaí, the jacket had been planted there to mislead them. People were really starting to think that she had been killed and buried somewhere in the countryside. In 2003, 3 years later, there was still no sign of Sandra, and it started to take its toll on the family. Eleanor, Sandra's mother, was diagnosed with cancer, and on her deathbed, surrounded by her family, they made one last promise to each other. Eleanor promised that when she got to heaven, she'd do her best to send Sandra home to them, and in turn the family promised they'd keep looking for Sandra and also bring her home. More years went by and the family kept Sandra's name out there. In 2010, a new superintendent took over and started looking into Sandra's file. After going over it and there being no proof of life for 10 years, Sandra's case was reclassified from a missing person to a murder. This was a huge shock to the family because they spent the last 10 years living in hope that she would turn up again or that she was living her best life elsewhere. Now they had to think a new way, and it was devastating. Now that it was classified as a murder case, a new investigation began. All the witnesses were re-interviewed and an appeal sent out for new information in the hope of breaking the case. A number of people came forward with new information and the Gardaí gathered everything they could for the next 2 years. In 2012, a man was arrested and charged with the murder of Sandra. This man was last questioned in 2011, and another man and woman were also questioned about impeding the investigation. On the 29th of April 2014, the first day of the trial began. Martin Early from Ballina, the accused, pleaded not guilty. He admitted that he had a relationship with Sandra in the weeks before she went missing. He said they had only slept together twice, December the 1st being the last time. He said they met in late 2000 and he walked her home one night from the pub and they had a kiss and a cuddle. Early said Sandra thought he was single but later admitted she knew he was married. On the 1st of December he met Sandra in the pub. They left separately and met up in the car park where Early had his van parked and they had sex. He said he wore a condom and he had also previously. In other words, I'm not the father of this child. On the 4th of December, Sandra rang Early from a phone box in the town. She told him that she was in a bit of trouble, that she was 2 months pregnant and only found out that day, but it had nothing to do with him. She asked him if he could help her out as she didn't want to go through another pregnancy. He told the court that he was shocked but didn't take her asking for money as a threat, and he said he'd help her out to a certain extent. He said he had lied to the Gardaí when they first interviewed him, after they found his phone number in the fleece jacket, in order to protect his marriage. So the evidence against Early, really, it's a mixed bag of nothing. Most of the witnesses came forward with hearsay. They all had a falling out with Early at one stage or another, and it all came across as revenge testimonies. Nobody could corroborate their stories, and after the 17-day trial, the judge advised the jury to acquit Early on the grounds of there wasn't enough strong evidence. Early walked away with a smile on his face, hand in hand with his wife.
It's the news at 1 on RTE Radio 1. Next we go to the Central Criminal Court, which has been sitting in Castlebar, where a County Mayo man who had been on trial for the murder of missing woman Sandra Collins has dramatically walked free.
The family were devastated. The killer was still at large and the family had to move on, with not letting Sandra be forgotten. After the trial they put a plaque on the pier in Killala so people wouldn't forget her. While it's no substitute for visiting her at a grave, they felt they should do something for Sandra. 2 years after the unveiling of the plaque, Sandra's dad Joe passed away, and the same promises were made at the bedside when their mother Eleanor passed away. All they want now is Sandra home and laid with her parents Joe and Eleanor and her brother James. It's where she belongs. In 2020, Patrick, Sandra's brother, received a letter stating that Sandra was buried under concrete in a certain area. Patrick handed the letter over to the Gardaí and still nothing has happened. I know what I'd be doing. I'd be out there with a sledgehammer myself, but that's just me. At Christmas 2021, Patrick received a phone call. The person gave information that seems credible, and again the information was handed over to the Gardaí. Still, as of today, nothing has happened, but it is still an active case. Patrick said they are at a stage now where they just want Sandra home, so they can have some peace. He says she had her flaws like the rest, but we still keep going for her. Every year now on the 4th of December, family and friends gather together at the family home and light out the back garden in memory of Sandra to let her know a light still shines on her and she is not forgotten.